Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very empowering show coming right up with special guest Daniel Bruce Levin, and he's here today to share with us his new book, The Mosaic. Now, Danny walked away from an opportunity to run a business that's a household name in order to hitchhike around the world to find happiness and inner peace. The people he met along his journey reminded him of the characters in the Mosaic. Danny is a connection expert and business leader who works with government organizations, corporations, and businesses to improve how people treat themselves and others. He shares a message of unification and is a popular speaker for groups whose focus is on problem solving, innovation, and conflict resolution. So let's welcome to the show, Danny Bruce Levin.
What a treat. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to it because I've listened to some of your shows, and I've been looking forward to having that beautiful heart and mind to ask me the questions you ask others.
Oh, well,
so
thank you. My goodness, I have told you, and I was emailing you this when I first got your book. I mean, absolutely love the parable that this book talks about. And we're not going to get into all of it today because, of course, we want people to pick up their own copy of the Mosaic, but it is so heartfelt. I mean, there were parts of it that, I cried, you can really get engaged with. It makes sense. And I think that's why people are so excited about this book.
Yeah, there's some magic to it and I think that for me, Marianne, the times are changing. And I think, like, I'm a teacher by nature. I pontificate, I have knowledge, but even the book itself is telling me it's time for that to stop. The paradigm of vertical relationships where people teach other people, it still has its place, but there's a new paradigm, which I think is a Mosaic relationship, where we all just come together and the relevance of each piece, the voice of each piece, coming together sings a chorus or makes an artistry that is so much more beautiful than just one person knowledge to another. And that collective knowledge is so much more important. And somehow in the story, when we hear a story, it allows our mind to personalize the story. And we start to think, well, what would I do? Or that sounds like something that happened to me. And it takes it a little bit away from the story that the book is talking and makes it more the story of the person reading the book, which is something I love and I didn't even know was possible when I wrote it. So I'm being delighted each day by the responses that I'm getting from people all around the world reading it, saying, I can't tell you how much this has moved me.
It really is. And, I've got a ton of questions, but before we go there, I would love for you to share with our listeners what was the main thing that inspired you to write the Mosaic?
Legacy, really. And when I first sat down to write, it wasn't this book that I was writing. But what's interesting is, and it was something that happened all through my writing, it came to me and connected to me and wanted me to say a message. And when I went off point with my writing, I would either lose what I wrote, it would erase what I wrote, it would just get me caught up where I would just say I got to start over. And it's almost as if the characters came alive and said, we want you to hear what we want to say. Mm-hmm. Because the world right now we're so connected. We're more connected than we've ever been. I can tell you what's happening 10,000 miles away. And yet at the same point in time, I don't know the name of my next door neighbor. And in some ways, we're more isolated and disconnected than we've ever been. And there's so many things that are happening between the lines, in the spaces between the words, in the Mosaic, that once you read it, its magic sort of takes a part of your soul. If you enter it, you can read it and put it down and not have anything more to do with it. But once you actually read it and invite it to come into you, Just like we were talking about in our little pre-talk, that one connection of my name being similar to your dad's name, the same, that we use Danny. That connection, as insignificant as it may seem, opens up a door to allow another connection to happen. And when we follow those connections, where we go is miraculously beautiful. And that's the message of it, to see what you don't see, to hear, to take the time to just listen to the people that you pass by every day. Take a few moments and just listen to them. Let them tell you their stories. Let them feel that you care about them enough to take a few moments of your day to just listen to the things they tell you. And I think the world will change if we just listen to each other a little more and speak to each other a little less. It's just an interesting thing that's coming to me.
Yeah, I would agree. And, it's really interesting. When you wrote this book, I mean, from what it sounds like to me, it sounds like in many ways it was a channeling that was taking place.
Yeah, I wouldn't go as woo-woo as that because, that's only accepted in certain places. But
I get it.
But for those that mean something, and I'm not that type of person, really, but it was almost as if, let me try and say it in a different way, because you're really saying it correctly. And yet, what it wanted to tell me is that everything in the world is speaking to us if we would only take time to listen. When I work with companies and they're stuck in a problem, I'll ask them, what do you think the problem is trying to say to you? And they say, well, gosh, we never looked at it that way. I said, well, take a minute and look at it. Like, what do you think the project wants? It's enough to say, this is what I want, this is what I think I should do, but step aside for a minute and just listen. What is it that the project wants? In our country, where we're so divided right now between red states and blue states, what is it? What do you think the country wants? Not so much what does our silo speak of, what does our silo want, but what does the issue want? How does it want to be resolved? And I think we would hear something that we don't hear normally. Because when we're talking so much, we can't hear the whispers of the answers that come to us. When we see what we always see, we only see what we see. But when we learn to engage in people of unlike minds, when we learn to sit with people that don't think like us, suddenly the world we see has another perspective to it. And we might not agree with it, we might not accept it, we might not want it. But when we take the time to listen to it, something magical happens. Does this make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I look at this, and it's when we pick up on the synchronicities that take place in our lives. For me, I feel like that's where all the magic happens. And there was so much of that was interwoven in the mosaic that for me it made perfect sense. But it was interesting how you wove the story, because it wasn't what most people would think.
No. Which is the story of my life. I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, my whole life I grew up sort of seeing the world differently than most people. And to be honest, I felt isolated and alone for a lot of my life because everybody wants to be like everybody else, right? We wanted to say, hey, this is easy. I see that. Like if the whole world sees red and you see yellow, you sort of feel, I felt like, oh my God, why do I see yellow? But it was only later on, as I started to work with organizations who were looking for ways to innovate, or governments that were looking for new solutions to old problems, that I started to realize seeing what they don't see is a real advantage, because it allows me to give them another perspective. They don't have to accept it. They don't have to take it. But somehow just in the thought of getting out of the silo of thinking that we're in, and embracing another possibility, new possibilities open, even newer possibilities than the ones that I'm just saying. It's like that connection thing, the synchronicity of one connection leads to another. And once you're open to that reality, everything in life changes. Marianne, I say this to people, wherever I am, whether it's in a corporate meeting with a CEO of a company, whether it's in a family, whether it's with a single person looking for their soulmate, whether it's with people that are impoverished and want to have prosperity, if we would only realize that we're one connection away from an entirely new reality. If you look at a mosaic, it's surrounded by the pieces it's surrounded with. If you change one of those pieces, or you follow the connection of one of those pieces to the piece it's connected to, and the pieces it's connected to, suddenly your whole world expands. So we're one connection away from prosperity. We're one connection away from having our soulmate. We're one connection away from being in the job we adore. We're one connection away from feeling like we are complete and purposeful and whole. We're one connection away from solving every problem that exists in the world. If we would only allow ourselves the spontaneity to make those connections, to listen to what those connections are saying, and to allow them to take us to the next place.
Well, and it seems like we have a generation of people, and actually probably a few generations of people who don't even know how to make connections. I mean, you talked about this earlier about how we are, so connected. I mean, we could see what's happening on another continent, but at the same time, we don't know our neighbor's name. And I,
yes,
can attest to that. I mean, I've been to different historical sites where, instead of being in awe of what's around you, like the Grand Canyon, people are, taking time to position themselves for selfies. And there's like no discussion going on whatsoever.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems to be a disconnect, not only with other people, but with the world around us.
Yeah. So what I realized, and maybe this is a great segue, because what the Mosaic taught me is there are really 4 basic connections that happen, and all of them are important for all of them to happen. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And the connections are a connection to ourself, a connection to source, to something bigger than ourselves, whether it's God or source or universe, whatever you want to call it, a connection to purpose, and then a connection to others. And most of us go to connection to others thinking that that's the connection we're seeking, and that's what connection means to people. But when we connect to another person without having a connection to ourselves, or to knowing, or to source, or to seeing something greater than us at work here, or to know what our purpose is, our connections sometimes fall short. And I think that's why sometimes we feel so empty, and we feel like some of our connections are meaningless, or they're nice, but we feel a little empty. And each of those connections has a practice to do in order to make those possible connections happen. Would that be interesting for you if I shared those with you?
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay. So this is going to sound like, when these came to me, I'm like a fighter inside my own head. I thought, come on, this is so simple. Like, that people aren't going to want to. People have heard this a million times, and they're going to think you're just like saying the same thing everybody else has said. Because the first practice is so simple, and we've heard it 1,000 million times. And that practice is be kind to ourselves. But what I realized as I sat with it, and I stopped fighting it, is I spend so much of my day putting myself down, thinking I can't do something, thinking I'm not good enough, thinking it'll never happen. Even with writing the Mosaic, I thought, why me? If I had my druthers, I would be in a cave in the Himalayas spending my time in solitude. Like, why would you want me to talk about connection? I'm like the worst person in the whole world to talk about connection. And that story is something, and it's true, but that story is something I do over and over and over in my life. Like, why me? The answer that I received was interesting to me, and it said, it wasn't because you know how to do it, it's because you need to learn how to do it. And that's why we're using you to do this, because you need to learn how to connect. And so I had spent all my time connecting to source, but very little of my time connecting to self, connecting to purpose, connecting to others. And so when we constantly knock ourselves down, eventually we're going to protect ourselves. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm constantly hitting myself, I'm going to say, gosh, I need to build a little protection for myself. I'm going to put a wall around me so that I can't hit myself. And so forget about you hitting me. You're already out that far away. You're never going to hit me the way I hit myself. So my wall has to be like 3 inches from my body to protect me because I don't know where I'm going to hit myself. I could hit myself in my foot. I could hit myself in my face. So I have to have a floor-to-ceiling wall around me to protect myself from my own possible attack. So when I'm walking with walls around me that enclose me that much, how much am I going to be able to connect to anybody? What I'm going to be able to do is my wall is going to connect to their wall. And it's going to leave us empty because both of us, like I realize I spent so much time hoping you'll never see over the pretty painted walls that I put up to make you believe that when your wall hits my wall, we've actually connected. But we didn't connect. We didn't connect at all. My wall hit your wall, and you have no idea who I am. You don't know that I'm sitting behind my wall in fetus position, hoping you'll never hurt me. So when I'm kind to myself, I can take down that wall that I used to protect me from me, and I can become open. And even if I put up another wall 5 feet away where you are, or 10 feet away where you are to keep myself safe from you, I suddenly have 10 feet around me where I had 3 inches around me before. And the world that can enter me and the world that I can enter is so much richer and so much fuller. That then step 2 comes into place, if that's all right. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying so far?
It does. It does. And I will have questions after you go through all these.
Okay, well, why don't you question me now? I
can question you right now then.
Question me right now. Go for it. We'll get through them.
Well, and it has me wondering, okay, so you start the book starts off in pain and loss. And it's a pain and loss that pretty much anyone can connect with. You know, they can feel that, they can make it theirs, and it's very tangible. And so when you talk about we've got these different sections of the book and connection, you know, I really felt like the reader is really connecting with that loss so that they can actually feel. Because you're right, because unless we are connecting at all, we really are not feeling a thing.
Yes. And beautiful question. I so love you because you're having me see things that I never saw before. And I want to thank you for that. And it's in that pain of loss that I write about in that first chapter that makes me scared to confront the world because I don't want to be hurt like that again. And so what happens is, even though you relate to my pain, I don't allow myself to experience that anymore. So I immediately, in those moments, and if you get past it a little bit further and you meet one of the other characters, which is the bodyguard, you see him see the walls that I put up around me to protect myself. And it's those walls that I put up around me to protect myself that rob me from the experience of allowing me to connect to you, feeling my pain, because you feel that same pain too. And so my thought process is I don't know that I can let you feel this, because what will you think of me if you know how much pain I'm in?
Yeah.
When I allow that to happen, and even more than that, when I become vulnerable, which is practice number 2, and I become open to receive, to allow to become a holding place for you to put your pain into me. And I can give you the real version of me. Something magical happens. Thich Nhat Hanh, who is a Vietnamese monk, speaks about this, and he calls it compassionate listening. And he says, and it's what I was trying to say through the Mosaic, but honestly, he said it so much more elegantly and beautifully than I could ever say it, that I just always quote his name when I talk about it, because it's so exquisitely beautiful. when we would learn to not only listen, but listen from a place of compassionate listening. When I can come and meet you and I can say to you, Marianne, I have no idea the suffering you've gone through in your life. I don't know your pain. I don't know your suffering. Will you please take a moment and share that with me? Will you just let me know your pain? And will you allow me the opportunity to just hold that for you and accept you in that pain? And he says, even if the pain comes to the point where they start cursing you out, or if they start saying it's your fault that I feel this, you just listen. You don't defend yourself. You don't rationalize. You just listen, knowing that in the compassion of your listening, you're allowing their suffering to leave them and go into this holding tank. And the more that you can be there to just relieve them of their suffering, the more you will have served an incredible place in their life just by the compassion of your listening. And that can only happen when we're vulnerable enough and free enough in ourselves, when we love ourselves, when we're kind enough to ourselves to know that they're not talking about us. Because when you yell at me, really what I hear is me yelling at myself, and I just say, oh, you're right, and, I start hitting myself again. But when I'm kind enough to myself to say, gosh, I fell down, and you're right, I did something, but you don't even have to answer it. You just listen to it. And you just accept it. You can talk about it later. You can set up another time to talk about it if you want. But in that moment, you just listen. And you allow them to pour all of their pain into this holding tank. Then, oh my God, what happens? What sort of relationship develops at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because, the Mosaic really has you viewing things in a way that you typically would not. And expanding that view gives you insight into a world that most people never even get to glimpse.
Yes. And to be honest with you, I finished writing the book almost a year ago. I'm only now learning about the words that it wrote through me. And I don't think that learning is even close to being over. I'm understanding as I reread it or as I start to meditate on it, I'm starting to say, oh my God, that's what that meant when I wrote that. Because it wanted me to learn something through it. And so once we get to that place where we're vulnerable and we let the world in and we give of ourselves to the world, then we can have these authentic relationships where I'm not showing you the wall around me. And I'm sure you know people like this, that they spend all their time telling you about all the things that they've done, but they don't spend any time telling you about who they really are. When people used to introduce me, they would introduce me with this beautiful list of accomplishments that they thought I had made. And I would get up and say thank you to them, and I so appreciate the kindness with which they introduced me. But I said, really, none of it matters. Because the only thing that really matters right now, and this is really all that matters in our conversation here, Marianne, will the people listening to this conversation feel loved and feel the space to actually reinvest in their life for themselves, not to pay anybody any money, reinvest in their commitment to themselves to live a more authentic, more real life, to live the life that they want to live. Nobody tells them what that life is. If you're happy living the life you're living now, so be it. I celebrate. Let's go out and have a scotch together and celebrate that, right? But if you want, if there's a part of your life that you want to change, you can do it. You're one connection away. You just need to get the courage up to just say, I'm going to do this. The beautiful thing about this is one practice leads to another. And that's what's beautiful.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Daniel Bruce Levin in regards to his new book, The Mosaic. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne. We'll be right back after these messages.
Internationally recognized and award-winning author Judy Goodman works and teaches outside the box of limited thinking. Working with people from every walk of life, her goal is to empower you to be the best you can be, no matter what the challenge is. Born with the gift of seeing beyond our normal vision, she has an extraordinary gift of working with every challenge. Teaching beyond conventional wisdom, her work is described as life-changing. Visit judygoodman.com. That's judygoodman.com.
There comes a moment when you realize you're somewhere special, when you discover that each beautiful creature that you see has been rescued from a life of absolute horror and brought to this incredibly free place. Here's where their lives were forever changed and where yours will as well. Discover over 500 tigers, bears, and lions at the brand new visitor center at the Wild Animal Sanctuary just outside Denver. For more information, visit wildanimalsanctuary.org. Discover true freedom at the Wild Animal Sanctuary.
Have you ever had the sense that your thoughts might actually be doing something? Ancient secrets of manifesting have been masterfully revealed in the award-winning book Manifesting 123 by Ken Elliott. For the first time, the author's experiences and stories in this book describe exactly how your thoughts can create anything. You've been doing this all your life, but it's never been fully explained for you until now. Visit manifesting123.com for more information today. Manifesting123.com.
There are nearly 2 million Americans living with amputation. Many live right here in San Antonio. Becoming an amputee can be scary, frustrating, isolating, but there's no reason to feel alone. The San Antonio Amputee Foundation is here to help support you and guide you toward resources such as home and car modifications and even prosthetic limbs. For more information or to make a donation, visit saamputee.org. We'll help you live a full, active life, one step at a time. San Antonio Amputee Foundation, healing limbs, hearts, and souls.
Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Daniel Bruce Levin, and he's sharing with us his new book, The Mosaic. Now, Danny, before we went for break, we were talking about how the Mosaic is a message about connection. So, the question I have for you is, when we are so connected, as it explains in the Mosaic, do you feel that when people are in a state of suffering, it's because of a perceived disconnection, or is that a reality?
I would invite people to ask themselves when they are in pain, why do they feel they're in pain? Why are they in pain? So many times, and I've been just trying to do some research on this on my Facebook page, and if people want to reply into the show, what does it feel like to feel connected? And what does it feel like to feel disconnected? My theory going into it, my assumption going into it, is when we're connected, we're happy. And when we're disconnected, we're unhappy. When we feel like we can share who we are with the world, or even if we're alone in a cave like I wanted to be, my connection would have been with God, with Source. That makes me completely happy. When we're connected to another, when we're connected to our purpose, when we're connected to why we're here, when we're connected to other humans, when we're connected to animals, when we're connected to anything, it seems like it just makes our life bigger. We're no longer one, we're now two, we're five, we're 100,000, we're 1,000,000. When we connect with each other, what ends up happening is we end up seeing things that we never could see before because it gives us altitude. We can climb on each other's backs. We can build things together. We can do things we can never do alone. We were never meant to be alone. And so I'm trying to mind hack this whole superhuman, Kate community of people that says, what's your superpower? I think that whole idea of us having to be Superman or Superwoman only continues in our self-loathing process. Why can't we just be ordinary? Why can't we just be beautiful, ordinary people? And for those who say there's nothing beautiful about the ordinary, I wish I could take their hand right now and walk them to the sea, to the ocean where I live. And I wish for one moment they could sit with me and watch a sunset. It happens every single evening. It's the most ordinary thing in the whole world. In fact, we know exactly the moment the sun is going to set. What could be more ordinary than that? And yet every sunset is more exquisite than the one before. Every one of them in their own way. You feel as if God himself is painting the sky for our pleasure. And it literally takes your breath away. What could be more ordinary than nighttime following day? But the extraordinaries, the superhumans, the superpowered people believe they can change night. They can say, no, they can last longer, and night has to change when we say change. But you know something? Day doesn't think about that for 1 minute, because it doesn't care what they think. Day, when it's time for it to surrender into night, just surrenders into night. Because it's part of the laws of nature. And when we respect the ordinary, we start to respect the laws of nature and the way the world operates. In our businesses, if we would accept the laws of nature, what's trying to happen? There's a time for things to begin. There's a time for things to end. What's this business trying to tell me? What's my relationship trying to tell me? What are my kids actually saying to me? If we would listen, the very wind that blows through the trees is telling us a message. But we've removed ourselves from that. We've become a little disconnected. And so to me, the answer to the question is, when we connect to the things around us, we're happy. We feel alive. We feel the very breath of the world breathing through us. But when we disconnect, and we feel like we have to protect ourselves, and this is my space, and this is my silo, and you can't come in because you don't believe like I believe, we spend our time defending ourselves. We spend our time enclosed in small areas when there are large areas right on the other side of that wall. And I wonder why.
Yeah. It seems that we're all really good at building walls, aren't we?
Yeah, because we have so much pain, and I understand it. I've spent so much time behind those walls myself. I still have walls around me. But it's when we take down those walls, when we meet people that we can trust enough that we can say, hey, if I really come out and show myself to you, will you not hurt me? Will you try your best not to hurt me? And even if you do hurt me unconsciously or without willingly or even willingly, I know that you're doing your best. But I'm still going to come out to you. Because in order for this world to change, we need to go from thinking we're impenetrable to being vulnerable. Because vulnerability takes more courage than anything else in the world. And it's in our vulnerability that we allow ourselves to take risks, to come together, to innovate, to make things happen. And if I can, I'd love to just share with you the third practice then.
Of course.
Is that okay? Okay.
Yes, of course.
Are you? Is this too spacey, or is it making sense to you?
No, it makes perfect sense to me, and it goes very well with the book. You know, there's a lot. I mean, it all ties in. You can see where it ties in when you've read the book. And so, no, please share that with our audience. I know they'd love to hear it.
I love that you're saying all that, and yet for me, a lot of these things are in the spaces between the words that the book actually says. The book only hints to some of these things in my mind, but if you sit and allow the book to speak to you, not just in the words it says, but in the space between the words, in the space between the lines, you'll start to feel some of these things start to emerge, and they won't be these things, my things. They'll be things that mean something to you. And they might be what I'm saying, but they might be completely interesting and new things for you. And that's why I'm saying, when I say to people who have read the book, I don't say what did you think of what you read. I ask, what did you experience in reading it? What was your experience of it? So once we're kind to ourselves, and we take down our walls, and we allow ourselves to be vulnerable and open, and we can give to the world and receive to the world, then what happens is we start to become like receiving stations. All this stuff comes to us. And we have to then understand what our purpose is. Why are we here? What's the meaning for us to be here at this point in time? I believe in a world where we don't need to duplicate what's been done before. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. And if we were created in this moment in time, there's a reason why we're here in this moment. And that doesn't mean we have to say something that no one else has said, because I don't even know if that's possible. But the way we say what someone else has never said before, the stories we tell, the analogies we give, the audience that we will draw to ourselves is a different audience than the ones that other people draw to themselves. When I was at Hay House, I was a director of business development. Hay House is the largest self-help publishing company in the world. And I was there for 10 years. When I came, it was doing $3 million a year in sales. When I left, we were doing $100 million in sales. And we were a team, but that growth came through my department. I was the director of business development. I created new businesses and new opportunities and new ways of seeing things and new ways of doing things. And that was a huge growth for us. And so but we knew what our purpose was. We were a self-help publishing company. And so when people came to us and wanted to publish books that were not in the self-help genre, we just didn't do it. Not because we couldn't represent it, but because that wasn't what our purpose was here to do. So if you think about throughout all of time, if someone had done what you're here to do now, you would have not needed to be created. What you're coming to do today in this moment is so vital and so important to the world that you had to be created to have it happen. And then think about it from here till the end of time. Because you're going to do what you came to do today in this lifetime, no one will ever have to be created from now to the end of time to do it again. So you can understand why I'm a little perplexed when I say to people, why do you think you're here? And the overwhelming answer I get back from them over and over and over again is, I don't know. Never thought about it. I don't know. Like, don't you think it's time to spend some time to get to know why you're here? I had a teacher tell me, if you don't know where you're going, every road will take you there. And so, right? Right? And so,
there you go, right?
There you go. And that's how it seems like that's how we're living our lives. We're sort of unconscious about why we're doing what we do. We do it because we did it yesterday and we did it the day before, and we have a certain level of happiness and unhappiness, and it's bearable, and we don't want to change that, God forbid, because we don't know what that unhappiness might bring or what that opportunity might bring. So we play safe and we stay within the box and we do what we do. What I'm saying to you is there is no box. What would happen if you realize there's no box? You're one connection away from living an entirely new life. One that is enriching in every single area. And why not take that? Once you're kind to yourself, once you're vulnerable, and once you can now know your purpose, you can start to walk towards your purpose in a way that will help you get there. Because you won't just be turning left to turn left because you don't know where you're going. You'll have a direction. You know what you're here to do. What a gorgeous, beautiful life that is. And let me just close with the fourth one, because it just makes it so easy. Once we're kind to ourselves and we're vulnerable and open and we give and receive to the world that we participate in, and we know where we're going, then it's time to do the fourth practice, which is build your mosaic. You start to bring those pieces together, and those pieces start to come to you without even your knowing it, that will take you to the destination you want to get to. You'll start meeting people that will help to encourage you to go that way. You'll start meeting people not necessarily of like mind. They can be like or unlike mind. But people that will actually be integral parts of your life to help you accomplish what you're here to accomplish. And you'll be an integral part of someone else's life to help them accomplish what they accomplish, because together we can do things we can't do alone.
Yeah.
Right? Right?
Yeah.
So what I love about this is how simple it is. Nobody that I say this to, I mean, it takes me a long time to say it. I have to shorten it down. But nobody that I say this to says that doesn't make any sense at all. It's so simple. Mm-hmm. And we get it. So what is holding us back from living it? Why don't we just take that risk? That's my question to people. If it's so simple, let's just do it. There's no reason anymore in the world that people should be hungry. There's no reason in the world that I know, that I can think of, where people should be homeless. There's no reason people shouldn't have good health care. There's no reason people shouldn't have clean drinking water. There's no reason in the world why women should have to sell their bodies to make money. There's no reason why an imaginary border between two countries should separate people from having a life that they dream of living. There's no reason why we would, because of the color of a person's skin, think they're better or worse than we are. There's no reason why a certain religion that we were born into should have control over whether we get saved or not saved. And I just look at these things and I just think about, hold it. What is going on? Is this the world that I dreamt of giving to my grandchildren or my children? No, it's not. We live in such a divided time. It seems like we just want to fight each other for no reason. Just to fight each other because we're so unsettled in ourselves, we have to prove to the world that we're right. But we're not right. We're only part of right. And when we come together and create this beautiful artistry that's a mosaic, where broken, shattered pieces sit together with whole, glorious pieces, and you can't tell the difference between what's broken and what's whole, where red pieces and black pieces and white pieces and yellow pieces and orange pieces and green pieces and blue pieces all come together to make something more beautiful than any of those pieces are on their own. Why doesn't that make such simple, innocent sense that we all just practice it? Where did we grow up believing that because my skin is white, I'm better than someone whose skin is black? That's just ludicrous. I'm sorry, I'm sort of pontificating.
No, you know what? I agree with you. There's a lot that's going on there. And when people lose their sense of connection, these kind of, different barriers do come up where people believe they have to be part of one group or another to feel connected, instead of realizing we are all connected regardless.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. And I wonder if some of this is a sense also, aside from being disconnected in some ways, that we're also losing our ability to listen to one another.
100%. 100,000 billion%. If you think about, let's just take an easy thing, because it's such a bedrock of discontent in our world. Let's look at our political structure in the United States right now. If you go on to CNN and you go on to Fox, you don't even think you're living in the same world. But when the left talks to the right, they don't talk to the right, they talk over the right. And when the right talks to the left, they don't talk to the left, they talk over the left. So you have two sides yelling at each other, trying to prove their point on the other's network, so that the people that listen to that network will see the light. Nobody sees the light. All we see is how fed up we are of people just yelling at each other and not listening to each other. When resolving the issues become more important than the side that wins that's right, our world will change. And there's no reason why that can't change now. One of my dreams in the future, I don't see a way to make it happen yet, is to start the Mosaic Club. And the Mosaic Club will have a very inexpensive membership, maybe $1 a month. The idea is just to have people give into it. But it'll be a place where people come to listen without judgment and speak without anger, where we share ideas. When I grew up, we loved the idea of someone not thinking like us, because it gave us a chance to hear and see and experience the world through a different set of eyes and through a different heart. And we would sit with each other and talk with each other and get to understand it. And that made our lives richer and fuller. I honestly, Marianne, I believe in a world where anything is possible. I believe we're one connection away from having the answers to all of this come to us. The only reason to me it's not possible right now is I don't see a way yet to make it happen. So the more I talk to people who don't see the world the way I see it, the more I increase my likelihood of the opportunity to see what I'm not seeing now and see a way to make that happen or allow that to happen or contribute to that happening. We have to start to take hold. We have to wake up from this lie that we believe that has become the truth. The lie has become so easy to believe we call it the truth, and the truth has become so hard to believe we call it a lie. And the lie is that we're separate, and the truth is we're connected. Science is telling it to us, not just religion and metaphysics. Science is telling us, quantum physics is telling us we're made up of energy. When we look at the very form that we live in and we put it under a magnifying glass, we don't see form, we see swirls of energy. And so that same energy that you're exhaling right now in the molecules of the air that you're breathing in and out of your body, I'm inhaling 1 second later, and it doesn't matter that you're on one side of the country and I'm on the other side, or it doesn't matter that you're 10,000 miles away and I'm here, because the speed of light is moving energy through us. It doesn't matter that it happened 100 years ago or 1,000 years ago. We are breathing right now the same breath that Jesus breathed, that Buddha breathed, that Mahatma Gandhi breathed, that Hitler breathed. And we're just connecting to certain parts of it that make us think we are this reality. But in those molecules, we can connect in another moment to something else, and everything in our reality changes. I hope I'm not getting too way out there. Are you with me?
No. I am.
No, you're not with me, or no, I'm not too way out.
No. You're fine. And it's not too way out there, because when we do think about this, I mean, it all makes sense. It's all interconnected. And a lot of times people just don't take into account how connected things are. And so that illusion of disconnect happens. And so,
yes.
I'd love for you to share with us, because I'm sure there are people that they're also going to pick up their copy of the Mosaic. Do you do any type of coaching or training that goes along with that? If there are people who want a little bit more in-depth knowledge in regards to that, how does that work with you?
Yes, and yes. What I want to try and figure out is, here's what I'm trying to figure out, and I'm open to anybody's help that can help me. I'm so sick of being sold to. I'm so sick of people saying, sign up for my program or sign up for this, and everything is just like one big sales job. The reason why I wanted to create the $1 a month club, and a friend of mine said, no, you should create the $1 billion a month club. But the reason I wanted to create the $1 a month club is I wanted to create a way where we could interact with each other without real charge. If someone couldn't afford the $1 a month, we would find a way to make that happen for them. But the idea being that if we could grow to If we're 1,000 people, the $1 a month club is going to have no significance. I mean, we'll get $1,000 a month and we'll donate that somewhere, but that's not going to mean anything. But when we get to 100,000 people, or when we get to 1 billion people, suddenly now we have $100,000 or $1 billion a month that we can put towards things that should no longer be problems. Those problems that I was talking about that we experience. We don't have to wait for charities or government organizations or countries to intervene. What we can do together as the pieces of a mosaic is say, we want to end hunger today. And we can use $1 billion a month to start to put into ending hunger by bringing together people of the smartest minds and people of the simplest minds, by listening to the beggar on the street and the scientist in the laboratory, and bringing them together to say, how would we do this? How would we create an end to hunger? We can start to finance those things through $1 a month. Just like little pieces of a mosaic coming together to create some big, powerful movement in the world. And I don't know if it will happen in my lifetime, but I know it will happen. I see it. Because the model that we're looking for today is one where we help each other, not hurt each other. We don't have to profit over each other. So do I coach people? Absolutely. Do I need to make a living? Absolutely. Do I give talks? Absolutely. But what I want to try and do is see how we can do that in a different way. How can we do it in a way where we grow and prosper each other? How can we do it in a way where it's not somebody teaching somebody, but all of us coming together and listening to each other and figuring out together how this solves? Let me, if I can, are you aware of swarm intelligence? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard the term. I'm not very familiar with it.
So I'm in contact with the people that are doing swarm intelligence, and what they did is they basically brought together. They came up with this theory that together, people who were not qualified or not experts in an area, but people, if you brought a group of people together, they would come up with the right answers. And someone said, oh, great, that's a really nice story. Congratulations. If you're so smart, we want you to predict the winner of the Kentucky Derby. And we want you to tell us then not only the winner, but who's going to come in second, third, and fourth. And we want you to use your methodology to do it. Well, they brought together 60 race enthusiasts, not race experts, but 60 people who like to go to the races. And they gave them a mouse, and the mouse controlled like a puck in the middle of it, and all of them together were able to move that puck. Do you know that in a very short period of time, those 60 people came up with the first place winner, second place winner, third place winner, and fourth place winner? It was like 1 in 700,000 chance of that happening. And here's the interesting thing: not one of them predicted on their own who would win first place, who would win second place. Only one of the 60 actually got the person that would win, the horse that would win third place, correct. And nobody came up with the one with fourth place. So it wasn't that they overwhelmed people and said, I know this, and talked them into it. They just moved the collective consciousness, actually, of those 60 people, moved the puck to the right thing. They've done it to say who's going to win the World Series, who's going to win the Super Bowl, who's going to do certain things, how initiatives and work are going to change. There is an intelligence of swarm. When you look at birds flying, no one's leading them. They're all just in sync with each other. They know exactly where to turn and how and when to turn. When you look at fish swimming, it's a swarm. They know they move in complete harmony with each other. We don't know that swarm intelligence because we think it has to be my way. I'm in control of this. But there's a new paradigm that's happening, that of swarm. That's what I'm trying to get to. And so on the short term, to make the transition, will I coach people? Absolutely. And they can get in touch with me by going to the mosaiconline.com. Do I give talks? Absolutely. They can get in touch with me at the mosaiconline.com. Will I come and work with groups? Absolutely. They can get in touch with me from going to the mosaiconline.com, which is my website. But here's what I'm really trying to do. I'm really trying to end this paradigm where one is better than the other. and introduce a new paradigm where together we're more powerful than we are alone. There is no better or worse. There's only together or separate. And why would we ever choose to live life alone when we could live it connected to something that's so much more beautiful, so much more powerful, so much more meaningful than living alone?
I am all for that, man. Sign me up.
Okay. Well, thank you. And every time I speak it, because I don't know how that's going to happen, Marianne, and I sort of hold back. I normally don't say it in the podcast that I do or the conversations that I have, because it seems far-fetched. Like, how will that happen? But it has to happen. It's the world that we dream of giving to our kids and to our kids' kids and to their kids, because it's a world where we cooperate with each other. It's a world where we're a mosaic, all pieces coming together. And the beauty of it is in our diversity. The beauty of the mosaic is in that it has a lot of different colors, different sizes, different textures, different shapes. That's what makes it beautiful. If we were all the same piece, it would be less beautiful.
It would be boring. And I don't know about you, but I never signed up for boring.
Well, I don't think I did either, but we tend to like it. Boring gives us comfort. It seems to comfort us. And I don't know why. Because we're so scared of getting hurt, we don't take risks. So my advice to people, if they would just start one place, start with just being kind to yourself. If you go to my website, you'll see I have a Be Kind to You bracelet. It's a little rubber band that you put around your wrist. And it's a 21 consecutive day challenge to see if you can be kind to yourself for 21 days. It isn't that easy. I've been doing it for almost 3 months now. I'm still on day one. Because what happens is every time I find myself not being kind to myself, I take it off my left wrist and put it on my right wrist. I find myself being unkind to myself again, I take it off my right wrist and put it on my left wrist, and I start over. But it isn't getting
a powerful exercise,
Yes. And it isn't getting to the end that's important. It's the process of watching how often I put myself down. It's the process of changing. It's the process of realizing, hey, today I was kinder to myself than I was yesterday. I only changed 2 times rather than 6 times.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I got to day 2. Hallelujah, I got to day 2. Wow, I got to day 4. What a miraculous. I've gone 4 days being kind to myself. Celebrate that. Even if on the 5th day I change. I still went 4 days. That's 4 days longer than I've ever gone in my life.
Well, it takes time, just with like anything that we practice, it takes time to develop those traits. It's not something that happens, it could happen overnight. I don't want to limit anything, but for most people, it takes time to develop that.
And it takes something as simple as a bracelet that you change from one side to the other, a ritual that you do that allows that to happen.
A reminder. Well, Danny, why don't you share with us one more time your website so our listeners can connect with you and be part of your community?
Thank you so much. It's very simple. It's The Mosaic Online. No spaces, just themosaiconline.com.
Well, I'm actually going to reread the book. I found it to be that powerful. I'm sure I'm going to be picking up some other tips. And just because it's such a personal journey, I'm sure I'm going to be picking some other things up as I go back through reading the book. And, Danny, thank you so much for taking the time not only to share your book, The Mosaic, with us, but also to share your insight and wisdom with us here today.
It's my honor. I want to invite people to not only get a book for themselves, get it for a few of your friends. Sit and start to talk with each other and listen to each other. Allow it to open up dialogue where you hear what people around you are saying. Take a moment during the course of the next few days, excuse me, to go up to a perfect stranger and just ask them to tell you their story. And see what happens. See if you don't walk away feeling enriched. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, it's been such an honor to spend this time with you. And gosh, I'm so glad we got to talk about your new book, The Mosaic. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.